I'm going to read to you from Wax and Wayne 4. So what is going on here? Well, I like to do readings from unpublished material, as of yet unpublished material. There's just a tradition I have followed since the early days of my career. I figure, it may not be the best marketing-wise, but it is what's more exciting to me. And to those who come who have already read many of my books, then this is something new and interesting to them. But it is always a little bit of a trick to figure out what to read, because I also generally don't want to spoil too much for people who have not read the series. But the Wax and Wayne books, it's always been fairly easy because the prologues of each of them are flashbacks to the past. Like I do in Stormlight with the flashback characters, we get basically one flashback scene per book in the Wax and Wayne books. And so this is actually going to be from the prologue of The Lost Metal, which is from Wayne's viewpoint as a little boy. Yes. So here we go. This is the prologue. I'm not exactly sure how long this will take. We'll read maybe, if it goes longer than a half hour, I might just call it there and then do the Q&A. But we shall see. I've never read it out loud before, so who knows? Wayne knew what beds were. A few of the other kids in the settlement had them. Sounded much better than a mat on the ground, especially one he had to share with his ma when nights were cold because they didn't have any coal. Plus, there were monsters under beds. Yeah, he'd heard stories from the other kids in the settlement about mist wraiths. They hid under your bed and stole the faces of people you knew. So beds sounded real nice. Soft and squishy on top with someone underneath you could talk to. Sounded like rust in heaven. The other kids were scared of those things, but Wayne figured those kids just didn't know how to properly negotiate. He could make some friends with something that lived under a bed. You just had to give it something it wanted, like someone else to eat. Maybe he could ask Ma to have a little brother. Anyway, no bed for him and no real chairs. They had a table built by Uncle Gregor before he got crushed by a billion rocks in a landslide and mushed up into a bloody pulp what people couldn't hit no more. Wayne kicked the table sometimes. Oh, I did misread that. Into a bloody pulp what couldn't hit people no more. That'll make you go, ah, less. Wayne kicked the table sometimes, just in case his spirit was watching somewhere, and because he'd made that table, and maybe first draft stuff. Because he'd made that table, and maybe it'd make him mad. Russ knew there was nothing else in this little one-window home that Uncle Gregor had cared about. Best Wayne had for sitting was a stool, so he sat on that and played with his cards, drawing hands and trying to hide cards in his sleeve as he waited. This was a nervous time of day. Every day, he thought maybe she wouldn't come home. Not because she didn't love him. Ma was a burst of sweet spring flowers in a sewage pit of a world, and he'd punch anyone who said otherwise. No, he worried that one day, Ma wouldn't come home. Pa hadn't come home one day. Uncle Gregor, Wayne kicked the table, hadn't come home one day. So, don't think about that, Wayne thought, bungling his shuffle and spilling his cards all over the table and floor. And don't look, not until you see the light. He could feel the mine out there. Nobody wanted to live next to it, of course, so Wayne and his ma did. Just under the window was a pile of laundry that Wayne had done for the day. His ma's old job, what hadn't paid real well, so he did it while she pushed mine carts. He didn't mind the work. Spent half the day trying on all the different clothes, from one sent by Gramps to the one sent by young women, and pretending to be them. His ma had caught him a few times and seemed angry, demanding why he did it. That exasperation still baffled him. Why wouldn't you want to try them all on? That's what clothes was for. It wasn't nothing weird. He just liked it. And what harm did it do? None to nobody. Besides, sometimes folks left stuff in their pockets, like decks of cards. He fumbled the shuffle again as he gathered the cards up, and he did not look out the window. Not until he spotted the light. He He could feel it anyway, feel it anyway, though, the mine, that gaping artery like the hole in someone's neck, red on the inside and spurting out light like blood and fire. They had to go down, dig at the beast's inside, searching for metals, then escape its anger. And you could only get lucky so many times. Light. With relief like fire on a frigid light, he glanced out the window and saw someone walking on the path, holding up a lantern to illuminate her way. Wayne scrambled to hide the cards under his mat. Then he was certain to lay on his mat with his lamp out, pretending to try to sleep when the door opened. She'd have seen his light go out, of course, but she appreciated the effort he put into pretending. She settled down on the stool, and Wayne cracked an eye. His ma wore trousers and a buttoning shirt, her hair up, clothing and face smudged. She sat just staring at the light in the lantern, watching it flicker and dance, and her face seemed more hollow than it had been before, like someone has taken a pickaxe to her cheeks, digging away like rock in the wall. That mine's eating her up, he thought. Even if it hasn't gobbled her all whole like it did Pa, it's gnawing on her, like rats on a barn wall. Ma blinked, then fixated on something. A card he'd left on the table. Ah, hell. She picked it up and looked right at him. He didn't try to pretend to be asleep no more. She dumped water on him. She'd done it before. Wayne, she said, shifting on the stool to look at him, where did you get these cards? Don't remember. Wayne, found them, he said. She waved her hand toward him, and he reluctantly dug the rest out from under his mat and handed him over. She tucked the one she'd found into the box. He knew from experience she'd look all day through the settlement for the one who'd lost them. She didn't have time for things like that. He wouldn't have her losing more sleep on account of him. It's Tarm Vestingdow, Wayne mumbled. They was in a pocket of his overalls. Thank you, she said softly. Ma, I've got to learn cards. See, that way I can earn a good living for caring for us. A good living? She asked. With cards? Don't worry, he said quickly. I'll cheat. Can't make a living if you don't win, see? She sighed, rubbing her temples. Wayne looked at the cards in the stack. Barm, he said. He's Terrace, like Pa was. Yes, she said. Terrace people always do what they're told, he said. So what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you, love, she said. You just haven't got a good parent who can help you. Ma, he said, scrambling off the mat. He took her arm. Don't talk like that, Ma. You're a great Ma. She hugged him to her side, but he could feel the tension in her. Ah, hell. What had they found? Wayne, she asked softly, did you take Demi's pocket knife? He talked, Wayne said. That rustin' little bastard. Wayne, don't swear like that. Rust that, he said in a rail worker's accent instead. The rusting bastard. He looked at her innocently and was rewarded with a smile she couldn't keep in. Silly voices always made her grin. Pa had been good at them, but Wayne was better, particularly now that Pa was dead and couldn't say them no more anyway. But then her smile faded. You can't take things what don't belong to you, Wayne. That's something thieves do. I don't want to be a thief, Wayne said softly. I want to be a good boy. It just happens. She hugged him closer. You are a good boy. You've always been a good boy. When she said it, he believed it. Do you want a story, love? She asked. I'm too old for stories, he lied, desperately wishing she'd ignore the objection. I'm 11. One more year and I can drink at the tavern and prove how old I am. What? Who told you that? Doug. Doug is 9. Doug knows stuff. Doug is 9. So you're saying I'll have to snitch booze for him next year because he can't get it himself yet? He met her eyes, then started snickering as she smiled. He helped her get dinner, cold oatmeal with some beans in it. But at least it wasn't only beans, and there was some oatmeal. Then he snuggled into his blankets on the mat, pretending he was a child again to listen. It was easy to feign that. He still had the clothes, after all. This is the story, she said, of Blatant Barm, the unwashed bandit. Oh, Wayne said, a new one? His mother grinned, then leaned forward, wagging her spoon toward him as she spoke. He was the worst of them all, Wayne. Baddest, meanest, stinkiest bandit. He never bathed, you see. Because it takes too much work to get properly dirty, Wayne said. No, because wait, it's work to get dirty? Gotta roll around in it, you see, Wayne said. Why in Harmony's name would you do that? To think like the ground. She smiled again. Oh, Wayne, you're so precious. Thanks, he said. Why ain't you told me about this blatant barm if he was so bad? Wouldn't he be the first one you told stories about? You were too young, she said, sitting back, and the story too frightening. Oh, this was going to be a good one. Wayne bounced up and down. Who got him? Was it a lawman? It was Alamancer Jack. Him? Wayne said with a groan. What? Jack brings them in, Wayne complained. He never shoots a single one. Not this time, Ma said, digging into her oatmeal. He was young this time. He knew blatant barm was the worst. Killer to the core. Even his two sidekicks, Gud the Killer and No Ways Joe, were 10 times worse than any other bandit ever walked the roughs. 10 times? Wayne said. Yep. That's a lot, almost double. His ma paused, then leaned forward and got back into it. They'd robbed the payroll, taking not just the money from the fat men in Ellendale, but the wages of the regular folk. Bastards, Wayne said. Wayne? Fine, regular old turds then. Again, she hesitated. Do you know what the word bastard means? Yeah, it's a real bad turd. The kind when you've really got to go, but you hold it in too long. And you know that because Doug told me. Of course he did. Well, Jack wouldn't stand for stealing from the common folk of the roughs. Being a bandit is one thing, but everybody knows you take the money what goes toward the city. The trick is, blatant barm, he knew the area real well. So he rode off into the most difficult part of the roughs to reach, and he left one of his men to guard each of the spots along the way. So Jack, he was going to have to fight his way through all three. Why is it always 3 in stories, Wayne asked. 3 bandits, 3 guns, 3 mines. Well, how high do you think most bandits can count? Probably not that high, Wayne agreed. Ma always had good answers to such things. Fortunately, Jack was the bravest, she said, and the strongest. If he was the bravest and the strongest, Wayne said, why was he a lawman? He could just be a bandit and nobody could stop him, right? Well, what's harder, love, she said, doing what's right or doing what's wrong? The right thing. So who gets stronger? The fellow that does the easy thing or the fellow what does the hard thing? Huh. He nodded. Yeah, I could see that. She leaned forward, grinning in the light. Jack's first test was the River Human, the vast waterway marking the border with what had once been Kolos lands, but now was controlled by bandits entirely. The swift waters moved at the speed of a train, the fastest river in the whole dang world, and was full of rocks. Gud the Killer had set up there across the river and watched for lawmen. He had such a good eye and a steady hand with his rifle that he could shoot a fly off a man at 300 paces. Why'd you ever want to do that? Wayne asked. Better to shoot the man right in the fly, right? It's got to hurt something bad. Not that kind of fly, love, Ma said. So what did Jack do? Did he sneak up? Not very lawman-like to sneak. I don't think they ever do that, ever. I bet he didn't sneak. Well, Ma said. Wayne clutched his blanket, waiting. Jack was an even better shot, she whispered. When Gud the Killer sighted him, Jack shot him right across the river. How'd Gud die? Wayne whispered. By bullet, love. Right through the eye? I suppose. And so Gud took sight, and Jack took sight back, and shot him right in the eye. Right in the eye, right, Ma? And his head exploded, Wayne said. Like a fruit, the crunchy kind, all ripe so the shell is tough, but it splats anyway. Is that how it happened? Yes, Ma said. Dang, Ma, that's gruesome. You sure you should be telling this story to me? Should I stop? Hell no. How'd he get across the water? He flew, Ma said. She absently set her bowl aside, oatmeal finished, and made a flourish with both hands. He had powers, Jack did. Allomancy powers. He could fly and talk to birds and eat rocks. Whoa, eat rocks? Yep, and he flew right over the river, but the next challenge was even worse. The Canyon of Death. Oh, bet that place was pretty. Why'd you say that? Because nobody's going to visit a place called Canyon of Death unless it's pretty. But someone visited it, right? So, because we know the name, so it's pretty, right? Beautiful, Ma said. A canyon carved through the middle of a bunch of scattered, crumbling rock spires. The broken peaks lined with colors. But the place was deadly as it was beautiful. Yeah, Wayne said, that figures. But Jack couldn't just fly over this one, for the second of the bandits hid within the canyon. No ways, Joe. He was a master of pistols and could also fly and turn into a dragon and eat rocks. So if Jack tried to sneak past, Joe would shoot him from behind. That's the smartest way to shoot someone, Wayne said, on account of them not being able to shoot back. True, Ma said. So Jack didn't let that happen. He had to go right into the canyon, but it was filled with snakes. Bloody hell! Wayne, regular old boring hell then. How many snakes? 1 million snakes. Bloody hell! But Jack, he was smart, Ma said, as well as being a great shot and able to eat rocks too, so he thought to bring some snake food. 1 million bits of snake food? Nah, just one. But he got the snakes to fight over it, so they mostly killed each other. But the one that was left was the strongest, naturally. So Jack tried taking it, so Jack talked it into biting No Ways Joe. And Joe turned purple, Wayne said, and bled out of his ears, and his bones melted on account of the poison being so bad, so the melty bone juice leaked out his nose while he was bleeding, and he collapsed in a puddle of deflated skin, all while hissing and blubbering because his teeth was melting too. Exactly. Dang, Ma, you tell the best stories. Wait, she said softly, leaning down on the stool, their lantern burning low, because the ending has a surprise. What surprise? Wait and see, she said. Because once Jack was through the canyon, what now smelled like dead snakes and melted bones, he spotted the final challenge, the Lone Mesa, a giant plateau in the center of an otherwise flat plain. That's not much of a challenge, Wayne said. He could fly to the top. Well, he tried to, she whispered, but the mesa was blatant barm. What? That's right. He joined up with the Koloss, the ones that could change into big monsters, not the normal ones like old Mrs. Knock. They showed him how to turn into a monster of humongous size, so when Jack tried to land on the mesa done gobbled him up. Wayne gasped. And then, he said, it mashed him between its teeth, crunching his bones like, no, Ma said. It tried to swallow him. But Jack, he wasn't just a good shot, and he wasn't just smart, he was something else. What? A big damn pain in the ass. Ma, that's swearing. I meant it in a good way, though, love. Oh, well, that made it all right then. He, Ma said, was always going about doing good, helping people, making life tough for the bad ones, poking his nose into things, asking questions. He knew exactly how to ruin a bandit's day, he did. He stretched out his legs and pushed and made himself a lump in blatant Barm's throat, so the monster couldn't breathe. Because monsters like that needs lots of air, you know. And right then, Alamancer Jack done choked him from the inside. Then, when the monster was dead on the ground, he sauntered out down his tongue like it was some fancy mat set down outside the carriage for a rich man. Whoa, that's a good story, Ma. She smiled, stepping over and kissing Wayne on the forehead. Ma, he said, is the story about the mine? Well, she said, I suppose we all got to walk into the beast's mouth now and then, so maybe, I guess. You're like the lawman, then. Anyone can be, she said, blowing out the lantern light. Even me? Especially you, she kissed him on the forehead. You are my love, Wayne. You are whatever you want. You're the wind, you're the stars, and you are all endless things. It was the poem she liked, and he liked it too, because when she talked, he believed her. Ma didn't swear and she didn't lie. So he snuggled into his blankets and let himself begin to drift off, because a lot was wrong in the world, but a few things were right. And as long as she was around, stories meant something. They was real. Until one day, there was another collapse at the mine, and that night, his ma didn't come home. And there we are. And that's the end. So yeah, there you go. That one's not going to be out for like a year and a half. I'm sorry. But I'm about 75% of the way through it. Sorry for the rough points in the prose there. It is first draft. The writing group has seen it and given me feedback, but I haven't gotten most of it in there yet. So there are definitely things that can change, but you'll be able to. You could go watch this on YouTube in a year and a half, compare it to the published version, and see how it turns out. I'm really happy to be writing the end of that series, not because I'm happy to leave it behind, but because it has been a surprise, right? A lot of my book series are planned out from the beginning. Like Mistborn, I had planned as 3 trilogies. And then if you haven't heard the story, I was working on The Wheel of Time, and I needed a break between books. This is just very common for me. But I couldn't take the time to write something really long. This was between Towers of Midnight and A Memory of Light. I had taken a break between Gathering Storm and Towers of Midnight, and I'd written Way of Kings, which just about killed me. I didn't want to do another 300,000 to 400,000 word book in between 300,000 to 400,000 word books. So I started a short story about Wayne, and it didn't quite work. It wasn't right. But it transmogrified into The Alloy of Law, which is one of the few sort of discovery-written books that I've done, that I just had to have something different to write. And it wasn't until I was finished with The Wheel of Time that I turned back and said, all right, I really like how those characters turned out. I really like having something from Mistborn in between Era 1 and what was then Era 2, what became Era 3, as I stuck this one in the middle. Because otherwise it would have been between, let's see, the Era 3 is probably going to come out 2025, and so it would have been almost 20 years between Mistborn novels if I hadn't done the Wax and Wayne books. And so it became a just like really fun surprise that I liked Alloy of Law as much as I did. So I sat down and I outlined a trilogy about the characters, and that is these 3 books. And it's now been a shockingly long time since I wrote those other 2. But, you know, life gets in the way, and by life I mean Stormlight Archive. And, you know, I really love the Stormlight Archive. I'm going to be writing it. It's a good thing that I love it, because I'm probably going to be writing it for quite a long time yet. But I really can only do one every 3 years or so, and I need stuff in between. And it's really fun to get back to this series. Little Boy Wayne was delightful to write. He is reminiscent of some children in my life that don't swear quite as much, but yes, have some similar attitudes to that. We're going to go ahead and go to the Q&A now, and I will let. Let's see, Shannon and Trey are going to go. So if you will raise your hands, do you want to call on people, Billy? Okay, Billy will call on people, and I'll just answer.
All right, so we'll start right here.
So once again, try not to ask spoiler questions if you can.
So can I mention stuff from work right here?
You can,
Not deep, but
try to talk around it. Just, yeah.
This is just generic.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can't say well, it's a shower. Okay, so if a regular awakener, just a mundane awakener with nothing more than a few hundred breaths and not any other outside influences, is there some command they could give a blanket to get the blanket to turn warm?
Is there a command that an awakener with breaths could give a blanket to make it turn warm? Yeah.
Generate heat. Is that a thing that you can make?
So not in just a normal situation. I mean, technically you could tell the blanket, start rubbing one part against another part or something like that, or set yourself on fire, right? But that's not what you're asking. So this, for awakening to work, you have to work with the intrinsic properties of the matter you're making, except it can move around a bit, and with a few little other things it can do. It's not outside the realm of possibility that you could activate those breaths as investiture to do something else, but you would need more than just the simple magic system of awakening.
Is there a significance between harmony and discord being musical terms?
Is there a significance between harmony and discord being musical terms?
Yeah, and if would they be considered different investiture tones?
Would they be considered different investiture code? So yes and no. So what's going on here is that it is significant. I chose those two terms very specifically. Not going to tell you a lot about Discord or things like that, but the idea is that idea of harmony is in, the sounds are in harmony. They are working together. In Discord, they are not. I wouldn't call them investiture tones, more the way the tones two tones are responding to each other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hi. So a few years ago in the panel, you mentioned that with the interest in the Marvel expanded universe,
Yes.
that Hollywood suddenly had an interest in the expanded universe. Now, at the time, clearly they're looking for expanded universes. Can you tell us anything about the interest you've had lately?
The interest I've had lately? I've had a ton of interest lately. But what I'm not interested in, so this question is film interest. I have to repeat for the YouTube video. Have I had, a few years ago I mentioned that I got a lot of interest because the Cosmere was a naturally shared universe. This was hot in Hollywood for a while, as evidenced by the terrible ones that they made and tried to force to work. So a lot of people were really interested in this. One of the big problems being that epic fantasy is super expensive, and they were really worried about doing epic fantasy. But epic fantasy is now becoming more of a thing that is not just the Lord of the Rings movies are good. Now we've got multiple good fantasy adaptations, and so yeah, the interest is high. The issue is I am now in a place in my career where I don't have to say yes anymore, right? So for the longest time, I needed that money from Hollywood. For those who don't know, like my first book, like Elantris, it was $10,000, which might sound like a lot to the aspiring writers, but that's $10,000 for a year's worth of work, right? And it got paid to me in 3 chunks. So it was actually $5,000 up front and then $25,000. And so like my first year as a writer, I did not make a lot of money, but the deal for Alcatraz in Hollywood, which Alcatraz wasn't even out yet, someone had read it at DreamWorks Animation, it was $35,000 a year, right? You can just kind of see the disparity of the money that flies around in Hollywood. And those early years, I survived on the option money for that and for other things. Like, it was really solid income when my book income was still catching up. Like, even when I did my second contract, they were impressed with how Elantris had done, and I got $20,000 per book, which is still not a lot for a year's worth of work. It's starting to get livable, but it's still like underneath the poverty line, right? And so these years, by the way, I like to joke, I was living on that movie income and also the sweet, sweet income of my public school teacher wife's salary. Yes, yes. Yeah, our first 2 years married, it was her salary that was supporting these books. And so, but these days, I'm not in that position, right? I don't have to worry about when someone comes in with a large check and says, here you go, Brandon. I can say no. And I've been saying no quite a bit because there are certain guarantees I want that most places in Hollywood don't want to give me. And that's fine. They don't have to, but they also don't have to get my book series, right? And so I have said no to a surprising number of things lately as I have been targeting working with people that I really like. And been taking a lot of meetings with people whose films I really like and impress me. And have been working with some people and, just doing a lot of things that I think will make the movies the way I want them to be made, and potentially television shows, right? Yeah, so. I can't announce anything, if that's what you're asking, but if you read between the lines and things I said, in various things, you might be able to pick together some of what I'm trying to put together. Okay, yes.
With regard to certain
experiments, would it be fair to say that Ishar and a certain scattering have similar goals?
I don't know that I would say that 100%. The certain Scadrian you reference has been able to achieve the goals that he wants. See if I can circumlocute this. There were, let's just say there's a certain set of bones floating around that already has a connection to this individual, which was useful in achieving what he wanted to do, which is not a luxury that Ishar has. Does that make sense? So there you go. Next one over here.
Investiture in Cosmere, when used, goes to the spiritual realm, except in one place. What determines which realm investiture returns to when it's being used?
Too many factors for me to actually say right here, Evgeny. So I'm going to RAFO this one. There are lots of reasons that it could go in different ways in different places.
How many of those reasons are
Rule of cool. Rule of cool is definitely a reason, but more it's I think he's trying to get at why on Cell things are weird, and I have not explained why things are weird on Cell yet. Yeah.
So on Roshar, it's kind of tradition men eat spicy foods, women more sweeter. So
Yes.
could it be possible that a sort of euphemism for gay men or gay women is, does he eat sweet food? Does she eat spicy food? Is that sort of like a...
I could see people saying that, yes. That's, yes. Oh, repeat the question. Oh, I have to repeat that question. You just give it, yeah, we'll just keep going. Yeah.
In the middle of time, the wheel keeps turning for infinity, assumingly, and they keep adding more and more heroes to the wheel. Eventually, will it be filled with infinite Batman?
Nice question. For those who don't get the joke, so this question is: the wheel turns infinitely. More people get bound to. Did you say the wheel, or the horn? The horn. Yeah, people get bound to the horn. So would the horn eventually be full of infinite Batman? Infinite Batman. This is a joke. It's kind of a deep cut because there's the second Legion story espouses Stephen Lee's philosophy that every person is infinite Batman. And so, nice. Very nice. I appreciate that. If you want to read the theory on infinite Batman, you can pick up the second Stephen Leeds story. I think I may have read that at JordanCon. No, it wasn't JordanCon. I was in the basement at a con. I did a reading from the second Legion story somewhere at a con. It wasn't here.
So the Stormlight Archive books are exhausting to write.
Yes.
They're also exhausting to read.
Yep.
If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need a break between your books, what should I read? What is the one author, series, or book that you would say, okay, this is what you should read between my books?
Okay, what is the series or book you should read between my books? Specifically with the framing question being that sometimes, like the Stormlight Archive is emotionally exhausting, and things like that. I bet half the room knows what I'm going to say. Go read Terry Pratchett. Yes. If you haven't read Terry Pratchett, don't start at the beginning. Color of Magic's actually his weakest book, I think. There are arguments for others, but what's that? Nard's Guards is stronger, I think, but you can argue. But that's where you're saying to start. Okay, yeah, where to start? Guards is one of the best places to start. My favorite two Pratchetts are The Truth and Going Postal, which are also both places you can start. The best Pratchett book is Night Watch, but you can't read that until you've read Guards Guard and a couple of other ones. So, but yeah, that's what I would say. If for some reason Pratchett doesn't work for you, what else could you read in between? Dresden Files. Well, they can get really emotionally exhausting though. I'm like, what's not? No, Dresden does get emotionally exhausting. What isn't emotionally exhausting? What's that? Lady Trent? Yes, Lady Trent. Yeah, there are lots of things. I'll just leave it at Pratchett. We could go on forever about, but yeah. Uh-huh. All right, over here.
The 17th shard is looking for a certain individual on Roshar.
Yes.
Have they found him yet, or what are they doing?
They never managed to find him. He is tricksy, as you might imagine, and he is a tricksy hobbit. And so they have never managed to find him. They think they got close a couple times, but they actually didn't. And by the point of Rhythm of War, they have given up and left planet because he kind of went behind their backs and was talking to people and things like that. So yeah. So we will catch up. We'll catch up to those three at some point, I hope, and find out what they've been up to. But yeah, they kept looking in the wrong countries. Oh, yep, Trey.
Now that you've gotten all 4 Wax and Wayne books out, what was your favorite scene to write in that series?
Wax and Wayne, my favorite scene of them all to write. Oh, wow. Probably the Wayne church bar scene. That chapter was just a blast to write. This prologue was a lot of fun, if you can't tell. But yeah, that's probably my favorite chapter, I think. We'll see. I haven't finished this book yet. Maybe there'll be another one that's more favorite than, yeah. Yep.
I know that it has been important to you to authentically and sensitively portray characters with disabilities. So I was wondering what research you have done or are planning to do to appropriately portray a character with a visual disability.
With a visual disability? All right, so the question is, I have tried very hard to appropriately portray people with disabilities. I think I made a good level up on that with Don Shard through some really good help from some beta readers. And what would I be doing to accurately portray someone with visual disabilities? I would probably use my same method, though my gut tells me that people with visual disabilities are one of those things that authors think they can write when they can't. Does that make sense? And so I'm going to guess, not knowing, that there are far more bad portrayals of people with visual disabilities than some other disabilities. Because of this assumption people make by wearing glasses. I know what it's like to have a visual disability and things like that. And so it might take I could write Rissyn by doing a legwork up front, writing the book, giving it to people, and them telling me what I'm doing wrong. I might need to get somebody in on the ground floor from before I write the chapters or books if I were going to do someone with visual disability, which I do want to do at some point in the future. So. But my gut just tells me, be careful, be extra careful with this one. So, Trey, wherever we are.
Fun one. I love your Cosmere food and everything, and I see this question quite often. Does ice cream and popcorn exist on Roshar?
Unfortunately, does ice cream and popcorn exist on Roshar? Unfortunately, neither of them do. I know you can go to Scadrial and get some, right? But Roshar, they do get cheese and things on Roshar from sow's milk and things like this, but they are just not as milk-based as some cuisines on Earth. And ice cream is just not a thing. They also, ice is not a thing that they're really doing a lot with. And popcorn, requires maize, we just... Yes, it is the corn, but if you pop it, it's gonna pop a lot more like barley, right? And so it's not gonna be the same, right? That's what Lavis is gonna be like. So it is the corn but more in the idea that it's probably more similar to a barley would be, yeah. So.
So that first Kazanthi hunt in Way of Kings did not go as planned.
No, it did not.
Was that sheer bad luck, or was someone or something making that happen?
Excellent question. Sheer bad luck. Yep, sometimes bad luck is just bad luck. There were no mysterious people pulling the strings behind the scenes on that one. It just went as it went. Good question, though. Yes. I'm always glad when I can appropriately dispel one of those so that people don't have to theorize too much. So, yep.
So, us real time fans have been talking about when the TV show does come out later this year, how we want to watch it, whether we're going to like exclude everyone else and just sit in a dark room and watch it and cry. So I'm curious if you want the fans to watch it, if you are we talking about are we going to theater, and watch it in a whole group, or what we're going to do.
So what am I going to do when the Wheel of Time show comes out? How am I planning to watch it? With a group or things like this? So I will probably be watching it in my home theater. I have a fairly nice one. This team is, you keep quiet over there. The theater has just started the weekend. We watched Black Widow with the company in the theater, and so it is a little extravagant. So I'll probably watch it there. I've tried to convince Matt Hatch that he should do like live premiere chat-alongs and live reactions or something. Which would be fun. If that's happening, maybe I would do that because I have already read all of them. I'm just really curious to see if anything I said made any difference, right? Because I still don't know, right? I've turned in, like I called Rafe, on each of them, mostly Zoom calls, and they're like, here are my thoughts, here are my suggestions, and did a nice, basically like an hour-long one on each episode. So. I'm really curious to see how they end up because I don't know how they will end up. So I'm very curious. I'm confident they'll be good, right? Like I've said that before. The writing is very good. The acting is very good that I've seen on set. Everything's looking good, but I don't know if what I've said will make a difference or not. So yeah, I've got a different kind of investment in it than the rest of you because I already have read the drafts. So. Yeah. Where are we? Oh, there. Ted, how you doing? Maybe she's coming. I'm good.
So, a certain person went to a certain friend and got a moon and a purse, and then later on, very recently, their fortunes have risen very high.
Yes. Rapho, but you will get answers in the 5th book about that, okay? So, excellent question, but this is a Rapho with a, yes, it's coming, not a nebulous Rapho. So.
Trey, are you pointing at yourself? Yes, I am.
Trey's got a question? Okay.
So, with that, we briefly discussed the mechanism with which breasts are decided to be kind of pulled out or out on Malthus. And you said that there is an intellect that is going them out, but that their intentions or that their goals are difficult to predict or non-standard. And my question is that are they non-standard because the base vessel behind them does not have, at its core, a standard human psychology?
Rapho, good question. Excellent question. Rapho, I like the way you're theorizing. I have said before that there are multiple non-human vessels in the Cosmere. Your theorizing perhaps is going to bear fruit.
We have one over there.
Did someone say Choles? No, it is not Choles. Okay. Like, no, there are no trolls that are holding shards. Wait, I'll skip. Could you soulcast bacon? Could Hoyd eat soulcast bacon? Could he eat? Yes, he could probably eat lab-grown meat. If he knew it was, or magic-grown meat, he probably could. Yes. It's gonna, like, his psychology will be influencing this, right? Which is why I say probably. But the magic would allow it.
I have a follow-up on that.
Yes.
If somebody lied to him about the nature of the meat, could he eat that?
No. No, well, okay, if they lied and said it was soulcast, yes, then he probably could.
It's based on his perception.
It's based on his perception, yeah, yeah. So I got that reversed. I thought you were saying, ask if, yeah. So, yeah.
So recently, I know the Wheel of Time thing, and we've been talking about the concept of post adaptation being released weekly as opposed to like a bulk release. I was curious, you're actually running with that, since if you had something adapted into a television show, what would you like to see, and would that depend on which story you're telling, or what are your general opinions?
That's an excellent question. So the question is, there's kind of a debate right now, do you do a full dump like Amazon often does of the entire season, or do you do what Disney Plus has been doing and doling it out week by week by week? Have they said what they're doing with the Wheel of Time? Okay, I know, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm glad you were honest with me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't tease that, but I'm glad that you were honest with me. So I don't. You want me continuing to read these things and not making mistakes and getting the people at Amazon mad. So, what would I prefer? So I thought that I would prefer the full dump until I've started watching several of these Disney Plus shows. Like, some of them it didn't really matter to. I kind of would have preferred if, like, The Mandalorian were just a dump. The episodes are episodic enough, but watching particularly WandaVision was a much better experience waiting, I felt. It was in some ways excruciating, but my wife and I have a date night every week, and so having a new one for us to watch for date night and then discuss and then wait a week was actually really nice. What we did with Winter Soldier and with Loki is that we waited until it had been going for a little while, and then we did 2 a night. And that's actually a better, it was really excruciating with WandaVision because a lot of those episodes were like 27 minutes or something like that. Maybe not quite that short, but the other ones have been longer. It worked really well for us to watch 2 episodes of Loki and I. I go back, I've inched back the other direction. I think it would depend on the story. It would depend on the format and things like that, right? They can get away with it better on Disney Plus because they are properties that people know are worth waiting for. And one of the reasons I released Launtress as a standalone is I want to introduce this to people. I want them to know that I can tell a story and things like that. And so if it were my very first thing, I think I would be more likely to do a full dump and just be like, here, trust us, here is the show, watch the whole thing, and things like that. But people who know more about all of this than me are watching really carefully the ratings and the engagement and things like that. And I think they will be the ones who ultimately decide in all of these cases how you do it. Hey.
My name is Joe, and I live in this realm. Is that, as I believe I've heard, is that going to be part of the Words of Radiance Kickstarter?
Yes, it will be part of the Words of Radiance Kickstarter. So there will be a novella about rock as part of the Words of Radiance Kickstarter. That's, if I don't give myself the deadlines, right, then it might turn into like Arithmetis 2, where it's like, well, I'll do it someday. So I've committed to doing that. It'll be the thing that I write right after Book 5, and it should come out right before Book 5. in the same way that I did with Dawn Shard. That's at least the plan right now. So, yeah. Hey.
Are we ever going to get more Axes the Collector scenes?
Are you going to get more Axes the Collector scenes? It is very likely that you will. Yes. I never even thought, of course, Mark, you would empathize and associate. Like, when you asked earlier about an Axes the Collector minifig, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a cool thing to do. I did not connect that, of course, yes. If we need someone to do a cameo and we do a television show, I'll ask them to call you. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did COVID affect your writing and your home life?
Good question. How did COVID affect my writing and my home life? So I was coming off of, in 2019, the most travel I think I had ever done, because I committed to 3 trips to Europe. And when they get me in Europe, they just are like, can we have you here? Can we have you here? Can we have you here? And I just end up doing a ton of stuff. And I counted up the days, and I was on the road over a fourth of the year. And so we call back my travel, and then it just inches forward again every time until I hit one of those things. For anyone who's, it's a Delta hub here. I was Delta Diamond and above, right? Any year I hit Diamond, there's something that like my brain says, wait, Diamond? What's wrong with you? What have you been doing? You said you'd never do this again. And so I was exhausted from travel that year because that was a Stormlight year. And so I was writing Stormlight Archive on the road. And so when the pandemic hit and stuff started getting canceled, I was empathetic with all the people whose lives it was really messing up and ruining. But there was a voice inside of me that was cheering because so many things got canceled, and even better, they went digital. So many things went digital. Like, we lost some really great things, like JordanCon. But, like, I was saying at dinner, there was a thing I had agreed to do because it was for a friend. I was going to speak at the Odyssey Writers Workshop, and they were going to fly me out to Boston for essentially 3 hours worth of work and then fly me home, right? So that is 8 hours of travel with an overnight in order to do a lecture and a 2-hour workshop. And that's just how the world worked. Like, of course, Brandon being here is the thing. And they just moved that digitally. I went to Adam's office. I sat there for 3 hours, and then I went home. And I think many of you had this experience, perhaps, where you're like, wow, when I cut out the hour-long commute each way from work, I have a lot more time for things that I enjoy. And so I'm hoping we learn some lessons from this. One of them being to me that I just don't need to travel as much as I was doing. And hopefully it doesn't creep back up. But yeah, for me, in general, it was upside. I felt like I was, when I finish Wax and Wane, theoretically, in a couple of weeks, it'll be the first time I'm ahead on a book for a long time. So there's this thing, some of you heard this story before, but early in my career, I had what's a normal schedule. So for instance, Elantris was, I got the offer to buy Elantris in April 2003. While I was in grad school, I got to walk in, by the way, to my grad school creative writing course in my master's degree in creative writing, and walk in, and the teacher said, "So, did anything exciting happen over the weekend to you guys?" And I got to say, "Oh, I got a book deal." That was really cool. They were very intimidated. And we signed the papers in November, and the book came out in May 2005. So the book was done and sent in, and we were working on it even before we did the papers. You know, we were doing some editorial things because we'd done a handshake, which means it essentially took 2 years. And I turned in Mistborn about a year later, and it came out a year after. And so there was this 2-year lead time, which is what publishing really likes to have. That's a good lead time. 18 months is still fine. It's pretty solid for a popular author. 18 months. Then my career started to change. And my life started to change. And suddenly, they would be in meetings at Tor, and they'd say, we need, the quarter is ending here. Why do we have a Sanderson book just sitting and waiting? Let's publish it. And so suddenly, there's that period where if people were following me back then, where they're like, wow, Brandon is so productive, rather than just regular productive. Because it's like there was books all the time, and they were huge, and they were like boom, 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 boom. It's because all the things in the pipeline, they just started releasing. And got to the point that by Words of Radiance, am I right, Peter? Right around Words of Radiance, it's where I finished the rough draft in January. I finished the final draft in July, and the book is out in November, right? And so it is from, I turned it in July 1st, and it's out in less than 6 months, which is just an insane schedule, particularly for 400-plus word books, 400,000-plus word books. And so this year, we've been able to say, ever since the book 2 and 3 of Wax and Wayne debacle, where I got ahead by writing a secret novel, right, and I turned it in the publisher, I said, I wrote a book you didn't expect me to write. And they're like, great, we'll publish this one, and then we'll publish the secret one 3 months later. I'm like, oh, but why don't you wait and we'll get ahead? They're like, bottom line, Sanderson book, yes, we're just going to release that. And after that event, my whole team, we decided we're not going to let them do things like that anymore. And we had a big, long conversation with the publisher that basically said, you can choose a release date for a Sanderson book when we, meaning me and Peter and the team, decide we are going to release a Sanderson book. But since then, we've still been kind of scrambling because I don't want Stormlight books to take longer than 3 years to get out. Because if you let it slide, I've seen what happens, right? I know if you don't meet if you don't have a deadline, then it's like, well, we could take 4 years. We could take 5 years, and it'd be just perfect. But then your brain, as an author, says, well, I have 5 years to finish this. And so I wanted to be very, very consistent on those because I got to finish those before I die, right? Yeah. Yes, let's clap for that. Yeah. And so we've still kind of been but the pandemic really let me get ahead. And if I turn in Wax and Wayne, like Wax and Wayne, I will have probably the full draft. The goal is to have it done by January, and then it's not coming out until November. We're 11 months ahead, which is not as ahead as like the 18 months that's normal, but for us, it's just going to be like so much breathing room. And theoretically, I'll be finishing the 4th Skyward book so soon thereafter for a release about a year after that. We're looking at spring of 2023 for that, and then Stormlight 5 in 2023 fall. I think that's what we're looking at. And I am warning people up front, Stormlight 5 is the one I will let slide a little bit if I need to, because it's the end of a sequence. And the deadline doesn't need to be as strict because it doesn't bump back things as much. So it's possible that Stormlight 5, goes into the spring of 2024. We'll see what happens there. But regardless, I'm feeling like we're going to be in a much better shape. So that was a long-winded answer to the question. I can't even remember what it was.
Let's go to Shannon here.
So we had some unnamed chart name drops in Rhythm of War.
Yes.
Has there been any kind of whimsical machinations on screen, or have they been mostly absent?
Have there been any whimsical machinations on screen? I like how you put that. Well phrased. Raffo. Yeah, sorry. I think there's a mention of whimsy in Wax and Wayne 4. So, capital W whimsy. Yeah. I swear. Surprise! Yeah. Oh my goodness. If there was an adaptation of one of my works, but I had to play a semi-major character, good phrasing there. What would I pick? Oh my goodness. I have to think about this. I have to play a semi-major character. Can I have acting lessons? Yeah. Probably Breeze is going to match me, right? I think I could do, with acting lessons, I could maybe do Breeze. So, yeah. What were you going to say, Billy?
I was wondering how well you would fit Sazed.
I would fit Sazed probably poorly, I think. I don't know. There's, get me a fitness coach, and yeah, possibly.
Chris Pratt can do it. You can.
Yeah, if Chris Pratt can. I don't know about it. I don't think it's impossible. I just think that sitting in a chair and telling people what to do is for those who know me, a pretty good role for me. Brandon's life is grand ideas, and then those people actually having to make it happen. So thank you, those guys. Like when I went to Kara and said, hey, we should do a Kickstarter for the next Leatherbound. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it'll be great.
She was supernaturally excited to do that.
Yeah, well, she actually was, because Kara gets really excited by these things, but the logistics of it. So generally, Kara gets super excited, and then Isaac gets terrified on her behalf, right? And then Isaac's like the voice of reason. He's like, yeah, so, yeah.
Assuming they have the same years of practice, who would have a better understanding of objects sold, a radiant soulcaster or a forger?
It's going to depend on the individual. I think that they both could make an argument, and I'm not sure. I think it's going to go neck and neck. All right, other questions? Oh, wait, we got to go to Shannon's person.
Why do you seem to like hard magic systems over soft? Does that also kind of translate into your reading?
Oh, good question. So why do I like hard magic versus soft, and does it translate to my reading? Second question is easy. No, I prefer reading a wide variety of magic systems, and some of my favorites are soft. The classic example being Lord of the Rings, which has a hard and a soft. I really like how that balance works. Name of the Wind's a good example also, a book that has a hard and a soft. You'll probably, like some of my favorites, do both and then contrast them together. Why do I write the hard? I find it more interesting for me to write. Just the way that I design stories, the way I design world building, the way I design characters. If I start writing a soft one, it turns hard real fast. And so, Kalyani, what are you smirking about? It's 10 o'clock, it's not 11 o'clock yet, so it's not time for the after hours programming. 4 minutes.
Does that complete your answer?
Yeah, that completes my answer. That's great.
Speaking about after hours, I heard you stay up till 4 a.m. Why is that?
I stay up till 4 a.m. Why is that? Bunch of reasons. Number one, it's just what I do. I did it in high school. Well, in high school, I went to bed about 2, got up at 6, and then came home from school and went to bed for 4 more hours. I did a 2 4-hour sleep schedule. My entire life, for whatever reason, it was very natural for me to, in college, get a job working a graveyard shift at a hotel. That's how I wrote a lot of my novels, was from about 1 until 5 writing, and then I go home and I go to bed at 7. Or sometimes I go to school. There were years where I was in college that I would go home at 10 and then go to bed. And naturally, I gravitate toward between 4 and 5. It just seems like the time that is my mind and body want to go to bed. Work-wise, it works really well. because what I'm able to do is I work better in 2 4-hour sessions than 1 8-hour session as a writer. Just by the end of 4 hours, I'm kind of done. And so I can write this way from 1 until 5, and then I can spend 5 until 10 with my family, and then I can go back to work from 10 until 2, which is what I usually do, and then have a couple hours off at night just to do whatever. And that schedule is really consistently repeatable, right? That's a schedule that is not grueling. It's not emotionally burdensome. I get my work done. I feel good about that. I spend a lot of time with my family. Have a couple hours to just play video games at night if I want to. Like, it's a real healthy work-life balance for me. And so if I got up early, it would be harder because slotting that family time in between the writing sessions, just you couldn't do that as easily with kids at school and things like that. So it works really nice. It was a little difficult for Emily to get used to when we got married. I tried going to bed at like a normal time, and then I just laid there in bed until it lasted like a week, till she's like, all right, just go to bed when you want to go to bed. She was a school teacher, like I said, and so she had to go to bed at like something silly, like 9 p.m. or something like that. Just ridiculous. So, yeah. This will be our last question because we need to be out of here at 11. So, final question.
Do Seons automatically know what they mean? Like, was it actually created being like, I am actually on light, or did he have to have someone draw it in and see what happened?
No, he knows intrinsically. Good question. The question is, do Seons intrinsically know what their Aeon represents? And the answer is yes. Good question. All right, thank you, guys.